Start that again. Welcome to the Mortgage Business Real Estate Podcast. We're going to share some tips, tricks, and insights into the local real estate market and business community, featuring Rockstar real estate professionals and five-star local businesses. So grab your beverage of choice, pull up your seat, settle in for this edition of the Mortgage Biscuit Real Estate Podcast. Hi, I'm Dennis Papernick with Compass Mortgage. We're home to better mortgage experience, and we're coming to you from the secret podcast room at the world headquarters of Compass Mortgage. You're in for a real treat today. We are joined with Tracy McGinnis, ReMax. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you, Dennis?
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for being here for us. I want to talk to you about a couple different things that are going on in real estate, what's going on in the market, and we'll just chit-chat a little bit about some of those things. So,
Perfect.
What inspired you to get into real estate? How did you get here?
Honestly, it's a funny story because when I was a kid, I used to take the bus to school, and I remember driving by a real estate office on the main street, and I don't know why, but I always thought, I want to work there someday. I have had no reference point for it, but so fast forward, 30 some odd years, I just had an appetite for it. So I started working at Town and Country Homes, which was a builder back in the 90s.
Right. I remember that.
It was a great job. I loved it. I mean, people were so happy. Homes were selling well, so they didn't have a problem selling their homes. They could come in and buy a new one with less stress. So that was amazing. And then I worked there for about 3 years, but as you know, maybe you don't know, but in new home construction, you have to work every single Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
And so that got to just be a little too much. And so my husband and I started a family, and I stayed home with our kids for about 18 years, and then I decided I was going to go back to work, and that's when my my next chapter in real estate started. So I worked for a corporate relocation company.
Okay.
And I also worked part-time for a Realtor. And when she dissolved my position, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I need a job. I wanted a job. And I thought to myself, hello. The only thing on my resume that was missing was my real estate license. So
Right.
6.5 years ago, I put my head down, I buckled down, I got the license, and then here we are today.
Oh, awesome. It's a great journey. 6.5 years now as a licensed real estate agent.
Licensed agent, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so you see quite a bit of the market, what's been going on in the market these days.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. So, the real estate market is constantly changing. I mean, everything is,
Sure.
That's the one constant thing in real estate. It always changes. The market changes. Sometimes it's a seller's market. Sometimes it's a buyer's market. Rates impact a lot of that. Inventory impacts a lot of that. So, what do you currently see going on in the market? What excites you about what's going on, and what concerns you with what's going on out of the market, and how are you helping the clients kind of navigate those?
I think what I'm seeing in the market is that the market is balancing, that the market is evening out. It's been uneven for so many years, and now
it's been a seller's market for.
It's been a seller's market. It's been crazy. I've called it hair on fire, the market where
right.
Everybody is running around like their hair is on fire. So. What we're seeing is that homes are staying on the market a little longer, which gives buyers an opportunity to see homes at a little more leisurely pace and be able to make their decisions based on facts and not just, knee-jerk reactions. So I
Right.
think that's beneficial to the buyers.
Yeah, I know. I've heard stories about showings starting like early in the morning, going through late at night, and people going in to see a house, and there's couples and their real estate agent on the car hood putting
Yes.
contracts together to get them in as fast as possible to try to
Absolutely.
kind of win the home, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's speed to lead for sure, but at the same time, if you don't have a good offer, and
Right.
just a little sidebar here, I tell my clients that an offer is not just about price. I said
Right.
an offer is an ice cream sundae, and the price is just the ice cream. And then all the other terms of the offer are the whipped cream and the sprinkles and the chocolate sauce and the cherry. You have to make sure, and maybe I'm getting ahead of us here, but you have to
No.
make sure that your offer is well-rounded and very strong in all aspects, not just, I'll pay $30,000 over asking price and I'll close a week from Saturday. That's not realistic.
Well, price is important. It's a great point you make up. You brought up here is that when you're making that offer, sometimes the some other things are more important to the seller,
For
or
sure.
equally as important. I mean, price is obviously important, but when you're going to close, how fast you can close, or how slow you can close. How maybe sometimes they want to delay the closing because they've got a different house that they're looking at. And maybe sometime post-close possession.
Yep.
There's a lot of different factors in that, and then the different things that go into that. But you're right, exactly. You have to put all those pieces together to make an attractive offer to that seller.
And I think that it's important to number one, to ask questions, because it's a negotiation. It's a two-sided deal. So what's most important for my client, as scenario that I have the buyer, what's most important for my client as the buyer may not be what's most important to
Right.
the seller. So communication between agents is critical. And if that breaks down, then that could be the end of the deal.
Right, right. Yeah, that's one of the things that we try to do is we have our clients go into our Get Committed program where we get them fully
Yes.
underwritten, fully approved. That way, we can kind of take that financing contingency off the table and close very quickly.
Right.
And sometimes it's important to the seller that, first of all, the price is important, but it's not paramount all the time.
Not
They want to be able
always.
to know, you want a certainty of a close. Because if somebody offers a high price on the house and they never close,
Right.
here you are 45, 60 days later, and then you got to relist the house.
It's a
You
nightmare.
got to explain it to other agents why the house is relisted. And all sorts of other problems come with that. And sometimes you may miss the prime market to sell your house as
Right,
well.
for sure.
Right. So, I mean, I had a client that we got through the whole process here, and then the house was relisted that they were interested in, and because to speed the close, they got the house even less than they offered the first time on the house.
Oh, wow.
Because the sellers had another house they wanted to buy, and they
Right.
were at risk of losing it because of the home to sale contingency. So they needed those funds to close. So, the speed to close was paramount to that seller. That was important. Price was secondary at that
Right.
point.
You have to find out what both sides' motivation is and
Right.
then work from that.
Yeah, because sometimes price it matters. $1,000, is that going to matter 10 years from now? Probably not. You got to move on with your life and get things done. If it's the house you want, or even the sellers, sometimes they want to sell. Maybe they're moving to Florida. Hey, let's just get it done. Get down there with your grandkids if that's what
Right.
you want to do, and move on. $1,000 sometimes, but sometimes people dig in, and it gets emotional. It's very
They do.
emotional.
It's enormously emotional. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of what I do well is I help to manage my client's emotion. That doesn't mean that you can't be upset or elated or whatever your emotions are, but it's there's a skill involved in, and I know that you recognize this because you work with the same people, that
Right.
there's a skill involved in managing the emotions, listening and letting the client express how
Yeah.
they feel, but then helping them to recognize how to move past that.
Right, right. So when you're dealing with like first-time home buyers, I
Okay.
mean, you probably have quite a few of those, as we all do. What is some of the challenges that first-time home buyers that you have to help them through, help them identify, and help them move on, so that they're prepared for this market?
I don't know if I'm going to answer that question specifically, but what I do to address and to help all of my buyers, but I do find that it helps the first-time home buyers tremendously, is that I have a buyer's consultation with all my
Yeah.
clients. I was blessed to help my son buy a home a couple of years ago, and I told some people that he was coming into my office to do the buyer's consultation. And they said, "It's your kid, why are you doing that?" I said, "Because he's not a realtor. He's never bought a home before.
Right.
It doesn't matter that he's my son." So to speak to what you're asking, for my first-time home buyers, I have them come in and we discuss the whole process from beginning to end. It can be a short period of time if the
Right.
client doesn't have a lot of questions, or it can take a couple of hours, and I work at my client's pace. With regards to the market, I help them to recognize that it takes a full team. It's not just myself that
Right.
takes them out and opens doors and magically they get the home. So I surround myself with good people in the process too.
Yeah.
And like I said before, managing expectations, because there's highs and lows, and as you go through the process, you're going to experience a lot of emotion, but really at the end of the day, as you said, closing is the most important part, so keeping people focused on that.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love working with you, is where you handle that side of it very, very well with the client, and then you allow me to handle the finance side for them. And because I have to work with the numbers, and oftentimes people have payment shock, what they think the house is going to cost them. Because they're using these online calculators that, ignore mortgage insurance, have, low rates, and aren't realistic in what they're going to get on what that payment's going to be on the house.
Right.
And I have to come in. I mean, I oftentimes have people say, well, I want to buy a $500,000 house. I don't want my payment to be $2,000 a month.
$1,200.
Okay. Yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I mean, the taxes are $1,200,
Right.
on some of these houses. So I have to manage those expectations or open their mind and say, hey, what, you want this, but this is what the payment's going to be.
Right.
Where do you want to end up?
Right.
Or how can how do we manage that?
Agreed.
And those things. And that's the consultation side that I have with them, is to walk them through all that, walk them through what their cash to close is going to be, so we can set the expectations to what that payment might look like and what that cash to close is. And my rule of thumb is I try to under promise and over deliver.
Okay.
Usually my payment's a little bit higher than what they're going to end up at, and as well as our cash to close, because I prefer the surprises to be pleasant versus unpleasant. If I tell
You
them
figured it out after all these years,
yeah,
right?
if I tell them the cash to close is $30,000 and it ends up being 28, they're not mad at me. But if I tell them
Sure.
$30,000 and it's $35,000,
Yeah.
they're a little upset with me, because now I got to figure out where we're going to get extra $5,000.
Right.
So I do that. So some of my peers don't do the same thing, especially the online lenders. Is
Don't even
they
get me started.
misrepresent what's going to happen, and
Right.
and I have to try to bring them back, and do that, and I tell them, hey, I'm accountable for you, I'm here for you, on that too. So we talk about first-time home buyers. What about buyers that want to sell their house and buy a new house? I mean, that's an interesting market right now, because many times these sellers have low interest rate loans. The gift of COVID, we had rates in the 3s, sometimes in the 2s. Now, I mean, the market for a while was in the 7s, and now we're in the 6s. We're in the low 6s, and we may be drifting down into the 5s. So I think that's going to bring more buyers that are going to sell their house and buy a new house.
Right.
So when you're managing that, how do you manage that process?
Again, I have a degree in communications, and my husband laughs when I say that, because he doesn't always think I use that to the best of its ability. But, I think at the end of the day, people who have to move have to move. And if you have a 3%, I say just thank the real estate gods that you've had this opportunity to have a lower mortgage payment. And,
Right.
But also, you have more equity because you've been paying it down. So.
Yeah.
I think, I tell anybody that asks, whether they're a client of mine or just somebody I meet out and about who finds out that I'm a full-time realtor, I say, don't listen to the headlines. Talk to me, because I'm a professional, and I work with other professionals that can help you understand the big picture. So
Right.
I think it's important to politely and gingerly steer the conversation away from the focus that so many people have, which is on interest rates.
Right.
So. A lot of people don't want to move, and if you have a 2 or a 3, I had this conversation just earlier today, if you have that interest rate and you don't want to lose it, then stay where you are. But
Right.
is where you are what you need? Like you said, earlier, that if somebody wants to move somewhere and be with their grandchildren,
Right.
well, guess what? You're
You have to
probably
move on with your life.
you're gonna exactly. So, and you know the numbers clearly much better than I do, but I think that also directing them to
Right.
a reputable lender, saying, why don't you run the numbers and see what it's going to look like? Because the longer that people wait for interest rates to come down, the higher prices on houses go.
Right.
So that means that you're waiting, and you're losing out on equity at the end of the day. So the
Yeah, that's a
interest
great
rate
point.
is not
Yeah.
always the bottom line.
Yeah, people are sometimes trapped or handcuffed because of that low rate
Or
and
they
that payment
feel they
differential.
are.
Well, they feel they are, and they're not sure how to handle that. They have this low rate, and they're not sure what to do. But life goes on. You got to move
Yeah.
on. Maybe you need a bigger house for your family. Maybe you need to downsize.
Sure.
And that's a good situation as well. But as interest rates go down, the market heats up,
Yep.
and housing prices are going to go up. I mean, we
More
were kind
competition.
of in this wonderland for a while, where typically you have a teeter-totter. When rates are high, housing prices are low.
Correct.
And when rates are low, housing prices go up. Well, right now we're in this market where interest rates were high, but housing continued to go up. And real estate is hypersensitive to hyper-local. So Chicago market's been still very, very steady, Eddie, still going up. And you may read the national headlines where housing prices are going down, but that doesn't really impact. You got to look at Chicago.
Right.
You got to look at the Chicago market. And sometimes you even got to look at neighborhoods because that matters.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, getting a professional such as yourself to walk them through those things, to help them understand that, and then get comfortable with the numbers. That's one of the things I'm very big on is this discovery call with them is talk to them about the numbers. I want you comfortable with the numbers, feel confident. We'll look at different loan programs, different strategies, and how to do that as well.
And I think so often people listen to the headlines or, look at, social media and they just believe what they see or what they hear or what their phone is telling them. And that's why I tell people the earlier that I can speak to a potential client, the better.
Right.
Because if I ask a client for a referral and they say, oh, I have a friend at work, but they're not looking for another year, I say, great. That's when I want to start talking to them because it's better to have all that time to prepare.
Right.
And what I think, one of your talking points might be is that somebody may be renting now and think that they have to have 20% down. So I can't afford to buy or have 20% down. But that's something that you and myself as a good team walk them through.
Yeah.
And waiting till you're ready when you don't know what ready looks like is not going to do you any favors.
Right. Yeah, mortgage insurance is not that expensive anymore. And plus, another thing that you may or may not know is that the Congress passed it and made mortgage insurance tax deductible.
Right.
It was forever. So it's just like a mortgage interest. So it's tax deductible. In the past, it had exemptions. It was like, and they would sunset every now and then.
Certain thresholds.
And now it's in there. But mortgage insurance, if you have good credit, it's relatively inexpensive. And it's fixed on FHA, so it's not that big of a deal. People say, "Well, I don't have to pay mortgage insurance." Thank God mortgage insurance is there because you're going to miss out on all this equity. I got this tragic story where I had a young kid living at home with his father, divorced parents. And he was going to buy a townhome, and we got him approved with 10% down. He had the 10%. He was going to approve. This was just after COVID. We got him locked in at 3.5%. He just barely qualified for this townhome, and he was going to do it. He goes, well, my dad wants me to talk to my financial planner. The financial planner said, no, you need to wait till you have 20% down so you're not paying mortgage insurance.
Yeah.
And I told him, I says, listen, let me talk to that financial planner. I says, he understands finance, and I do as well because I'm a former CPA.
Right.
I says, but he doesn't understand the mortgage business. And you got the gift of COVID with this low interest rate.
Right.
I said, you are never going to be able to qualify for this house again, where you're at, because rates are going to go up. And you're going to miss out, And the mortgage insurance was, I don't know, it was like $20-something a month, $17 a month. It was relatively small. I says, don't let this happen. Well, the financial planner wouldn't talk to me, and he says, well, I got to listen to my dad because his dad was giving him a partial gift.
Okay.
And so he ended up not doing it. And, I've kept in contact with him, and he's still living at home.
Yeah, kicking himself.
Yeah, he missed out on a huge opportunity because it was bad advice. I mean, it was, they were giving him honest advice, but they didn't
not
understand
the big
it.
picture, not the whole picture.
They didn't understand the whole picture, and they weren't willing to go out and do that, so they got to get the whole context. But yeah, it's just helping people through those things and understand. So some you can help, some you can't sometimes too. So we talked a little bit about inventory and what's going on with inventory. We talked a little about when the seller has a house to.
Yeah, we never did get that. I never did answer that question, did I?
Yeah. So when they're selling a house to buy a new house, that's sometimes some difficult waters to navigate as well.
Yes, and again, I think that it goes back to experience. I mean, I got my license in 2019, and then I started full time September of 2019 as a licensed agent. And I say that my career, I got shot out of a cannon into the COVID years. But at the same time, what that's done is that's helped me to know so many things that I wouldn't have known otherwise. So the way that we leverage somebody who is selling their home and buying their home is that you need to make sure that once again, it comes back to expectations, what the timing is for the seller who is buying, because sometimes they have another situation on the other side. So to know what the big picture is and using a rent back policy, which means that the homeowner can stay in their home after you've closed. So the buyer purchases the home, they own the home, the seller can stay there for a short period of time, and they pay new buyer the equivalent of their mortgage payment, their
Right.
monthly mortgage payment, in order to stay in the home. So it's a domino effect. It's
Right,
not always
right.
easy, but I think with experience and creativity, we make it work.
We've got this product where we have a buy before you sell product
Okay.
that is really helpful. And it just this past week is I helped a client who wanted to buy this house, and we're using the buy before you sell product on this, and he is the house is already contingent on a home to sale contingency, but he's able to kick out that contingency
Right.
because he doesn't have a home to sale contingency. So we're helping him to overcome that.
Good.
And so it is a good strategy. Sometimes you get the home to sale contingency. Sometimes the seller is not willing to do it, and he was able to kick out that home to sale contingency on
buyer.
the current buyer because he did not
Right.
have the home to sale contingency.
Right.
So because they're trying to sell their home in New Jersey, which I don't know how hot that market is there. I'm not real intimate with the New Jersey market, but the Chicago market, this house is going to sell in a heartbeat. So with this product, we're able to help them do that. So
Good.
and it's just being creative in the finances and helping clients do that.
Absolutely, and I understand how that all works too, the home to sell contingency with the 72-hour kick-out or 48-hour kick-out. So again, being educated and knowing the ins and outs of the market
Right.
are what helps to set me apart.
Right, yeah, it's good, and helping people with those, and helping them navigate those waters. And I think as the market heats up, it's going to be harder to have, I have to explain to clients, well, why would they accept my offer with the home to sale contingency?
Okay.
I mean, if they have, if you're selling a house in today's market, you're likely going to have multiple offers on that property.
Still, yeah.
Yeah, and let's say there's 5 offers, which may be low, but let's say there's 5, and 4 of them don't have home to sale contingencies.
Yeah. How does yours rise to the top?
Yeah. How are you going to incentivize the seller to accept your offer with a home to sale contingency? And that's a lot of hair on that offer, because it creates problems for them. They have to wait.
Right.
So you could throw money at it, but you have to overpay for the house, which is not a great solution. And or you can sell your house quickly, and maybe at a fire sale, which is not a great solution as well. So that's why this product, I think, really works. It comes somewhere in the middle and helps people with that.
And I think right now in the market that we're seeing with it balancing out a little bit better, where it's not just a seller's market so much anymore here locally, that's a really good, a valuable tool.
Right. It'll be interesting when we come around to the spring market, as interest rates start to go down. I mean, we're in the fall market, and when we start to get to the winter market, it kind of slows down a little bit. But, we always say this, the day after Super Bowl is when the kickoff of the market is,
yes.
So we'll have to see what that looks like. And we won't be worrying about our Bears in the Super Bowl this year. So.
Oh, come on. They just lost 2 in a row. They're getting the losses out of the way early on in the season, hopefully.
Right. So let's talk timing. I mean, so we talked a little bit about inventory balancing out. So it is balancing out. So for a seller or a buyer, is it a good time for them?
I think it's always a good time. I think that I keep coming back to this phrase, if you have the facts.
Yeah.
So I can't force anybody to buy or sell a home. So if somebody is in a situation where they have to buy and sell, I help them to understand what their options are, and they can decide from there. So I don't believe that there's a poor time to buy or sell a home. It's just if the time is right for you. So
Right. Doing those things, So and then when somebody's going to list their house, I mean, do you do a consultation on the house to go through the house and the marketing on that? How does
Absolutely.
what's some tips for buyer or some sellers rather when they getting ready to sell their house?
Well, I think sometimes my sellers may end up hating me by the end, but it's important. It comes down to, it's important to listen to what their needs are, and it's also important I feel it's important to be firm. So you start with the CMA, the market analysis, and help them to understand what the current market is and where they should list their home. So I have a thorough consultation with that. And then once they get to that point, then we discuss the next steps, because that's just step number 1, getting that contract signed. And then you have to help them to realize that we have to have my professional my professional photographer come in. If we need to do any sort of staging, then we talk
you're
about
not taking
that.
pictures with your phone and putting it
I am not, no, and shame on the people that are. But
Yeah, yeah.
that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
No, and my photographer also does what's called soft staging, which is a tremendous added value in a vacant home. I had
Okay.
trouble wrapping my brain around it at first, but once I saw it, I've used it ever since then, and it's
Yeah.
wonderful. It's when they put like towels in the kitchen and some towels in the bathroom and some light staging items around the home. So that's a service that I do provide. And then also, if the home is vacant, my photographer, can also do what's called virtual staging, which is to show the home, with a room empty, and then show the home with virtually staged
Right,
furniture.
right.
And these are the little extras that I do provide for my clients. Then I also help them to understand the checklist of things that they need to do for when I have an open house, and make sure that, the basics, make sure that the counters are cleared off and that
Right.
the home is clean, things like that, and the lights are on, and the drapes, or, the blinds are open. So I talk a lot to my clients about what they need to do. Let's face it, it's the end goal. The
Right.
end goal is to sell
To
your
sell the
home.
house,
I'm
right.
not here to torture you.
Right, right.
Every time you have to leave the house for a showing, they're probably like, oh, Tracy's making me do these things. But you know what? I've bought and sold enough homes
Sure.
personally and through my career that I know what works. And you have to look at it from a buyer's perspective. To eliminate the negatives, so a buyer can go in there and just envision themselves and their family in that home instead of pointing out the negatives.
Right, right. And so when you go through the house, for maybe for the initial, there's some things you have them do to the house. I mean, do you look for minor repairs that need to be done, or declutter?
Yes, yes.
You want to put it in the best position. How do those conversations go?
Well, it depends on what it is. But things like, remove all the rugs from, not all the rugs in the home, but like the ones in front of the sinks and the
Oh, sure.
bathrooms and things like that, and make sure that your bathrobes aren't hanging and things like that. Those are easy conversations. It's when they have maybe some, I don't even know, some very personalized decorating taste.
Uh-huh.
And I also work hand in hand with the stager. So it's advisable. What I will do for my client is that I will pay for the consultation for the stager if I
Okay.
see it's necessary.
Yeah.
And then the stager goes in, and the stager can say, that big, huge statue of the giraffe that you have in the corner, I know it reminds you of your trip to Africa, and that's a beautiful memory, but it needs to go in the garage.
Yeah.
So it's like push that off to the bad guy, bad cop off to them. So
Right.
I
That's
have
clever. So you get them to hate them,
reinforcement.
not you.
Absolutely,
That's awesome. So what about, when a buyer goes to buy the house, I mean, there's basically three negotiations. You have the price,
Correct.
right? Then you have the negotiation after the home inspection.
Yes,
You
you
know,
do.
then sometimes you have the appraisal. We haven't really had any trouble with appraisals these days. The houses have been appreciating just fine, and appraisals are coming back fine. But when you do that home inspection, how do you help first-time home buyers and maybe even sellers navigate those waters? Because the home inspector will come back with a million and one things. Because the way home inspectors
That's
are done
what they
today.
get paid to do.
Yeah, I mean, they'll talk about, sometimes it's like an electrical plate, we're talking about a,
Right.
25-cent item, and first-time homebuyers especially are very sensitive over that. How do you help them navigate those waters and to get what's important versus what's not?
I think that it comes back to communication.
Right.
It's being honest, and sometimes with buyers and sellers, and much of what we've talked about today, sometimes it's hard to hear the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
But it's important because we have to remember the end goal. And so with respect to the inspection, I tell my clients, this is not a to-do list for the seller. This is not a list of every item in
Right.
the home that isn't perfect, that we are going to require that they repair. If the item is working to the capacity that it's intended to on the day of the inspection, then unless it's not working the day of the walkthrough, then you take it as is. And there are certain
Yeah.
things that are health and safety related that, fall under a different category. But, I use a wobbly toilet as an example. Yes, you may need to repair that when you move in the home, but do you want to lose the home
Over
and
that,
upset
right.
the seller? Because it's at that point in time, it's gotten very, very emotional. So we have to manage
Right, right.
emotion. So
For both sides.
for both sides,
Yeah.
for sure. And I think that what's critical at that point is, I keep saying this, but I believe it very much, is communication, not just between my clients and I, whether it be on the buy or sell side, but between the attorneys.
Yeah.
And also between myself and the other agent, because we need to make sure that no matter what we're hearing from our clients, that we can help. It's like a triangle.
Right,
There's a lot of communication that has to go on.
Right, you got to help them through those things and find out what's important, what's not, and negotiate those important items.
Exactly, and let them know ahead of time what they could be expecting. And then just to speak to that, to one more level, is that I always tell my clients that on the day that you close, that we'll do a walkthrough, a final walkthrough of the home.
Right.
And that is intended to be able to go through the home and make sure that the home is what you think the expectations of what you're buying are what you're getting.
Right.
And the example I use is perhaps they're moving some big furniture out. They might bang a hole in the wall, or they may scrape it up, something like that. And we can work with that. But I like to have, I ask my clients to clear their schedule the day of the closing so that we can go through the day of. Because what if you go through the night before and everything looks good, and then a pipe bursts in the middle of the night? You haven't gone back to the home the day of the closing.
Right.
You're buying that home regardless of what happened. And I recently had a walkthrough where my client, the buyer, was able to get a brand new air conditioner because the day of the closing there was an issue, and I don't even know what it was because I'm not an HVAC gal.
Sure.
However, I knew how to remedy the problem, and they got a new air conditioning unit because of it. So, it was functioning properly on the day of the inspection, but it wasn't the day of the closing.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's good luck of the draw, right?
Yeah, and good realtor duty.
Exactly. Yeah. Fight the good fight.
Skills, exactly.
And because and that's important. I think of the home inspection is look at the mechanicals and the big items.
Right.
The roof, the HVAC, the air conditioner. The appliances.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure they're all in good working order and understand their age, and what that's going to be. Sometimes I've had clients where I've recommended they're worried about some things. I said, just get a warranty.
Home warranty.
Home warranty will bridge you over that a little bit.
Yeah.
You can keep those in place for as long as you want.
Exactly.
And there's some good warranty companies out there. They're not the horror stories they were years ago.
Right.
But there's some good ones out there that'll help you, navigate those things. So if the furnace does go out, you've got a little bit of protection for relatively expensive. And you can also sometimes get the seller to pay for those things.
Yep. It's all about knowing what your options are, and having done this for as long as I have, I know. I don't know everything. I learn something new on every single transaction. There's no question about it. But the thing that I've learned about inspections is that you have to prepare your clients ahead of time, because that, and like even closing date, things like that, it's the transaction is fluid, so it's important that I explain to my clients what all the scenarios are. So if they do come up, that they may be upset by them, but at least they're not surprised, because I've helped them to recognize it might be an option.
Plus, you've been at doing this long enough where it's not a surprise. You know how to navigate around it,
Right.
In a reasonable fashion to make it all work, and again, keeping the clients the eye on the prize, which is, whether it's the sales side or the buy side, that hey, ultimately you're going to get your kids in the school district. Let's look at the big picture here.
Exactly.
And I remember when I moved to my house was a while ago. But the sellers, they took down shelves that were it left big holes in the wall, and we had in the contract to leave the custom curtains, and they took those. So the day of closing, we we got the curtains back, and we got a credit for the repair of the walls. They took the shelves, and they were supposed to leave them. Take the shelves, I don't care. We got to fix the wall.
And I think that's what's very important in a negotiation, is to recognize that neither side is going to win 100% of everything. So what's most important to you, and what's most important to me, and how can we get to that and get this thing closed?
Right. It's really important. So, we're talking about the buys when you've already bought the house, but when you're walking through it, a first-time home buyer or even any of your buyers, what are some of the things that you're pointing out in the house to them that's you need to, maybe they're not looking at because
Sure.
you're the expert and you see something, you want to point it out, or you see something that's good or bad.
Right.
You want to point these things out to them so they understand.
And that's part of my superpower, I believe, is that, back when I was selling new homes for Town and Country, I remember our sales manager said to look at the home like an airline pilot would look. They don't just look straight when they fly, that they look all around. And that's what I do when I go
Right.
through a home with my clients. So they're looking at the cabinets and the flooring and the decor and the view and all those things. And meanwhile, I'm looking to see if there are any, bulges or stains
Cracks,
or cracks
water
in the
leaks.
ceiling, things
Yeah.
like that. And I won't just point out the negative or the positive. I'll say to them, see that seam in the ceiling? Well, that's very common. I'll say I don't see any signs of leakage. That could just be poor workmanship when they
Yeah.
were, when they were putting together the home to begin with. So I help them to see the things that they may think are red flags, but
Right,
aren't.
right.
But also, I'm very honest because that's part of my job is to let them know what they're getting into and what they're seeing. Like sometimes there are cracks in the basement and in the concrete in the basement.
Right.
People freak out about that. Well, there are some that are natural and there's a reason for that,
Right.
and I know what those are. But there are some that are red flags, and I need to be able to help them to realize what the difference is.
Yeah, foundation issues are a big issue. Yeah.
Well, there's natural cracking. That's
Right.
But again, to know what that looks like and to be able to help my clients recognize that is important.
Yeah, my first house was new construction, and we over time we developed a crack in the foundation, and it would leak a little bit here and
Right.
there, and we had one of the seal places
Sure.
come out, and it wasn't that expensive,
Right.
to have done. It never leaked after that,
Right.
so it was no big deal. We had a finished we finished the basement afterwards, and everything was
That's
fine,
good.
So it's understanding what that is, especially first time home buyers. They want the perfect house,
Yeah.
they don't want to get caught. And that's key when having a good agent and a good home inspector to help them
Right.
through those things, understand what's important, what's not, because you don't want to get them caught with a bad furnace or a bad air conditioner or maybe a bad roof, that they're not going to be happy with
Exactly.
a couple years down the road.
And knowing how to negotiate that is
Right.
important. So, and I have a whole team of people that I refer business to and
Right.
that I have, trusted advisors. So if they're
Yeah.
going to need a plumber or, a sealing company for not sealing, but a sealant company for
Sure.
the basement, things like that, I'm a one-stop shop for having
Yeah.
all of those referrals for them.
Yeah, not only during the transaction, but
Yeah.
after as well.
Soup to nuts, as my mom would say.
They'll probably, years later, they'll probably still come in and say, hey, I need
Absolutely.
somebody. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
my hope.
Yeah,
That's my hope.
I got a guy, right? I got
Exactly.
a guy, right? So, well, hey, so finally, what's your top piece of advice for a buyer, first-time home buyer, move-up buyer, trying to succeed in this market right now?
What is my number one bit of advice? Well, I have to be very honest. I do tell my buyer clients, don't fall in love with the home because there's a chance that you won't get it.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds kind of harsh, but it helps them to recognize that, this may not be the one.
Yeah.
And I do tell my clients that you will end up where you belong. And I have seen that time and time again. But I guess the actual advice that I would give them is that don't give up. Just, I am here to help you, and I know the market very well, and have a good team on your side, and we'll make it happen.
Right. For so long, it's been there's been so many offers on these houses that it was very common for buyers to get fatigue because they kept making offers, saying
Right.
houses and not winning that bid, because houses were going very quickly at top dollars, and the list price meant nothing,
Right.
because oftentimes it was well over that. So we got a little bit more moderate market right now, especially going into winter, but again, as housing prices as interest rates continue to go down,
Right.
I think that's going to start tamping up again, and we're going to get into that market. So, don't fall in love with the house. Be prepared to do battle, and put yourself in the best position to do battle when you're going out to buy that house. Get not only pre-approved, get fully underwritten, fully approved. Have all your ducks in a row. Come early so we can do any minor credit adjustments that we might need to do to put you in the best position to purchase.
Exactly.
People all the time tell me, "Oh, I got a 700 credit score." 760 is where you need to be.
Right, right.
If you're
It's
below
close, but not
760,
close enough.
if below 760, there's a pricing adjustment,
Mm-hmm.
to your interest rate for below 760. So we might want to boost that up.
Take some time.
You think you're sexy at 700, but you're not. So we got to get that up. And be prepared for that. Maybe there's credit adjustments and to help people with those different things to help them navigate that. And be careful who you're listening to. Filter it through a professional. And yourself, you're very good with clients. You help them navigate those things and understand those things, and you're honest with them as well as I am.
Yeah.
And I just say, I know somebody gave you some well-intended advice, but this is wrong because of this. And let me explain
Uncle
those to you.
Jim is not an HVAC guy
Yeah,
or a mortgage broker.
Right.
Well, and you said the word boost, which actually brings me to another point. I had a client a number of years ago, and she was very tight on her ratios, which we know ratios means your
Sure.
income to debt. And she was a week out from closing, and she thought her credit score was low, so she went on her Experian app, and she boosted her Experian score, which my understanding is that it takes your Netflix bill and your ComEd bill and stuff, and it
Self-reported,
factors.
right?
And she lost the house because she boosted. She went on one of the sites, and she
Yeah.
boosted her score. So my advice is, I have the 10 commandments of applying
Yeah.
for a mortgage, what not to do after you apply
Yeah.
for a mortgage. And I think that's number 11 now, because that's something that people focus so much on I don't want to say that, that your credit score isn't a big thing, but sometimes people get so focused on the small individual things
Right.
that they don't realize the big picture. So
Right.
maybe your credit score isn't higher, but that doesn't mean that it's not good. So talk to your lender, talk to your agent.
Talk to a professional. Don't. We do this all the
Yeah.
time.
I'm not going to cut your hair.
Right.
So don't try and buy a house on your own.
Yeah, my one thing I tell people all the time: listen, you may buy a house, 2-3 times in your lifetime. I do it every single day.
Sure.
Let me and my team help guide you and advise you. Don't do
Absolutely.
anything unless we talked about it, and whether it's a good idea or a bad idea.
Right.
So
The big picture.
because you don't want to blow up the transaction because of something silly.
Right.
So
We've both seen it happen. So I'm not there to shame somebody. I'm just there to help them understand what the best way is to
Good.
get to that end goal, as we keep
Yeah.
talking about.
Well, great. Hey, much success. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here,
Thank
and
you,
much
Dennis.
success this year, next coming years in the market.
Yes.
It's exciting, and it's ever changing, and we'll adapt.
It's always a pleasure. Thank
Great.
you, Dennis.
Thanks. Bye bye.